was a social media post, came out and said that the sole director was, quote unquote, allegedly found dead. Do we have any independent verification of this?
These vital oxygen plants need to be installed in hospitals. And if it is the case that the sole director of the biggest contractor in this project is now deceased, I'd ever encountered the term allegedly passed away. I don't know, it's an allegation to pass away. It's been the most bizarre couple of days that I've ever experienced around researching a public tender in this country. We met with Mr. Ndlovu at his offices together with their lawyers, their offices in Rivonia on that Friday. That would have been the 1st of November. And then on the evening of the 4th, the following Monday, there was a message on X by a South African journalist, Mr. Thabo Makwakwa, who said that Mr. Ndlovu had allegedly passed away. So that was the first time.
Guys, so following the investigation and the story I made last week about a ghost company that actually received to the tune of 248 million rand to supply oxygen equipment to hospitals in South Africa, we've just learned that, the alleged owner of this ghost company has actually died. And so this begs the question to what really happens then to the 248 million that had actually been disbursed to this company to actually supply these equipment to hospitals in South Africa. If the owner has died, are we going to see a return of those millions to the state coffers to be given to another company? Or what then happens to it? Especially knowing fully well this is a ghost company. We don't know how ghosts operate, okay? And so this ghost company's owner is dead. And the debt actually takes with it 248 million rand that is actually kept aside to focus and strengthen South Africa's hospitals. And these are the kind of stories that actually really makes me wonder, how Africa can actually go far with these kinds of issues going on, kinds of corruption here and there. It's really pathetic. But let's listen to this Daily Maverick investigator here really speak about this. And I'll be going in depth to the results of the research, the investigation that has been made, especially from a Daily Maverick report, really sound report that actually breaks down step by step on how this whole process, went down, that a ghost company in South Africa actually got a tender contract from the state to supply oxygen equipment for state hospitals in South Africa. And now the owner of this ghost company is dead.
So that we take the viewer along, we're going to get to claims suggesting that the sole director of this company may have died or may have been found dead. We'll get to that in a moment. But let's start with this company. And your article is very clear that it used fraudulent documents in order to bid for this tender to supply these oxygen plants at the 55 public facilities, public health facilities. Take us along as to how you came to that conclusion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just a very brief recap, and thank you for helping us give air to this very important issue. It certainly is a very big chunk of money that is now earmarked for these PSA oxygen plants, and it's really important that we ensure that the project is actually spent or executed in the correct fashion. So a quick recap, a couple of weeks ago, Daily Maverick published a first article on this issue. We kind of looked at who this entity Bulking was that had secured the lion's share of this contract. And we could find very little traces of the entity kind of, having a footprint in the medical space, in the medical technology space, and thereby being equipped, or experienced to deliver on this sort of project. And that really raised the red flags. But now, in our latest joint investigation, Daily Maverick has now partnered up with Amabungani, and I'm working alongside investigative journalist Azara Karim. And we've uncovered what appeared to be just an additional set of red flags regarding Bulking's bid submission. So, when a company like this is scrutinized or adjudicated upon, for supplying products of this sort, highly technical equipment for installing in hospitals, you would assume that there should be a couple of things that are in place during the bid process. And one of this kind of foremost, the foremost concern is around the SAHPRA certificate. That's the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority. Those certificates are given to companies to kind of enable them to lawfully trade in medical equipment like oxygen plants. And we then found that in the case of Bulking's bid, the tender that they'd submitted to the Industrial Development Corporation, which I want to make muddy the waters too much now, but the IDT is implementing this project on behalf of the Department of Health.
Yeah.
So when Bulking submitted its bid, it included a SAPRA certificate in its bid submission, and we found that that SAPRA certificate does not belong to Bulking. They were adjudicated on the basis of that certificate, but it is not Bulking's certificate. It belongs to a third-party company called Atlas Copco. It's a local subsidiary of a multinational firm, and they've confirmed that they did not give any consent for the use of their SAPRA certificate in any tender process. And that really is a very alarming a manifestation or occurrence of alleged or possible tender fraud. And then there are a number of other issues, also discrepancies around the address Bulking used for tendering for this project, and then also a witness signature that was included on one of the bid documents that Bulking submitted.
Yeah. The reason the viewers may be interested to know why the focus on Bulking, and I think it's part of what you have mentioned, that this is the company that has received the lion's share of this contract. Now, interesting, Peter, that the IDT, this is the implementing agent on behalf of the Department of Health, they were answering questions from the Sunday Independent media. And I just want to extrapolate a question from there that could potentially speak to some of what you have already suggested. There is a specific question that says, is the company that received the largest award based in South Africa? And the IDT, this is the implementing agent, they respond saying, yes, both companies are based in South Africa. However, original equipment manufacturer might not be based in South Africa. Now, here's the kicker. Here's the question that talks to your point about whether or not this company is above board in terms of the submissions for this tender. The question is, did this company meet all the requirements specified in the tender document? And the response is, yes, they met all required as stipulated in the expression of interest document. How does that response fit in to what you say you have subsequently discovered? Is the IDT telling lies here?
I would say we have a very strong suspicion that the IDT is not being truthful in its rebuttals around this issue. We've, of course, also seen, certain rebuttals has been circulating. The Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Minister Dean McPherson, has, of course, also put some pressure on the IDT, being the parent department, that holds sway over that entity, the IDT. And we've seen some of their responses. It's been circulating, it's been reported on. And certainly there are things to pick from the IDT's response that does not seem to hold up when the facts are considered. So they keep on harping on this issue, or this the supposed SAPRA certification that Bulking included, and they said was not required, or it was required. There's a lot of toing and throwing about that issue, but the fact remains that the SAPRA requirement was initially, and we've reported on, mentioned this in one of our earlier reports, our first report, is that the SAPRA requirement was indeed included in the original instruction implementing IP documentation submitted to the IDT, and that kind of seemed to have, it fell to the wayside during the tendering process. But the question then remains, if the SAPRA certification, according to the IDT, was not a requirement of this tendering process, why would they then, after the fact, essentially scramble and insist that the entities does possess the SAPRA certification, albeit through these third-party entities like Atlas Copco, for instance? The IDT very much knows that the SAPRA certification is a lawful requirement for any entity to install or work with or supply the sort of equipment that was tendered in this project. And I suspect they possibly deliberately omitted that detail to ensure that there were certain contractors, given a green light to clinch this contract, and then they are now in the invidious position where they kind of have to clean up and provide SOPRA certification and all sorts of spurious arguments around when the SOPRA certification came about and whether it was not required. But certainly there are holes to poke in the IDT's rebuttals. This is not a project that we are putting to bed by any means.
Yeah.
Daily Maverick and Amabongani is still very much, digging our teeth into this issue, and we will report on this matter in the coming weeks, and that'll include the IDT's handling of this contract, certainly.
All right. Let's then move the conversation along, Peter. Let's talk now about the purported demise of the sole director of this company, because your article says 3 days after you met with Mr. Ndlovu and his lawyers in Johannesburg, a report from independent media came out. In fact, this was a social media post, came out and said that the sole director, the name is mentioned here, a Nathi Ndlovu, was, quote unquote, allegedly found dead. Do we have any independent verification of this? Were you able to confirm this?
It's been the most bizarre couple of days that I've ever experienced around researching a South African or a public tender in this country. We met with Mr. Ndlovu at his offices together with their lawyers, their offices in Rivonia on that Friday. That would have been the 1st of November. And then on the evening of the 4th, the following Monday, there was a message on X by a South African journalist, Mr. Thabo Makwakwa, who said that Mr. Ndlovu had allegedly passed away. So that was the first time I'd ever encountered the term allegedly passed away. I didn't know it's an allegation to pass away. That being the case, we subsequently jumped through all the hoops, possibly at that point that we could have, to try and verify whether this was indeed the case. And really, my colleague especially, deserves credit for this. Azara Karim ran around Gauteng from mortuary to mortuary, contacted pretty much all the police spokespeople and police stations that could have been privy to any knowledge of somebody having passed away. And we made several efforts to contact the family members, to contact business partners, former business partners, and other associates, people associated with Mr. Ndlovu. And as I'm sitting here, more than a week on, I'm in no position to confirm any circumstances surrounding his passing or not. And that certainly still seems to be up in the air. We're looking to firm that up still. Because, it's not just a matter of, getting a sensational news story out there. There are crucial issues around the rollout of this project now.
Yeah.
These vital oxygen plants need to be installed in hospitals. And if it is the case that the sole director of the biggest contractor in this project is now deceased, then one would assume the IDT has to possibly reconsider this contract or retender because its principal implementing agent has now disappeared from the scene.
Yeah.
It's just really absolutely in shambles as we sit here.
Brilliant, guys. So we'll just go quickly into the report. The report is actually done by this same Pieter Louis Milberg. Actually, I think he's a Daily Maverick investigative journalist. And I think also this Amabongane, I think the both of them actually worked in this investigation. And it's actually titled here that alleged tender fraud and shock death of contractor Cloud 836 million rand hospital oxygen plants project. All right, so it's a shock death that's actually really strange. It says that a joint Daily Maverick and Amabongane investigation reveals how an obscure company used allegedly fraudulent documents to win 428 million rand tender for installing oxygen plants at government hospitals. All right. So it says that an obscure company that won a 428 million rand tender to bring life-saving healthcare equipment to public hospitals may have done so on the back of alleged fraudulent documents. A joint Daily Maverick and Amabongane investigation has identified discrepancies in the regulatory certificate by Bull Keng the little known company that somehow won the lion's share of the project spend. The company also seemingly used an address it didn't occupy when it submitted its bid. And while an allegedly fraudulent witness signature found its way onto one of the bid documents. Okay, so for me, this is really one of the most important elements of society, which is investigative journalism. I really appreciate the effort the Daily Maverick Investigative Journalists Act really put in, helping South Africa bring most of these issues to the fore. So it says that the Bulkeng saga took a bizarre twist last week when an IOL journalist claimed on social media that the company's sole director, Nathi Ndlovu, was allegedly found dead. All right. The post came only 3 days after Daily Maverick and Amabongane met Ndlovu and his lawyers in Johannesburg. This is strange. So Daily Maverick and Amabongane investigators meet the lawyers of this alleged owner of this company, Bulkeng, which actually won the contract from the government. And 3 days later, the report actually came in that this alleged owner of the company has died. Strange. So it says that we have not yet been able to confirm any details regarding Ndlovu's purported demise. One of Ndlovu's lawyers actually said that they had been in contact with their client's family and that he couldn't confirm whether the businessman had indeed passed away. Asked if the firm would respond to the issues raised in this article, the attorney said they no longer held a brief for Ndlovu. So it's kind of like, no, don't come here anymore. We are done. Now, it says that these investigators now, both Daily Maverick and Amabongane investigators, says that their focus remains on the tender process that preceded this dramatic turn of events. Spokesperson for South Africa's Hawks, Colonel Katlego Mogale, actually has confirmed that the matter is indeed under investigation, but he also added, this is a twist, that the team is not revealing too much information so as not to jeopardize the case. Now, it says that Daily Maverick actually previously reported that the IDT, Independent Development Trust, acting as an implementing agent for the Department of Health, DOH, appointed Bulkeng. Now, this company that's actually allegedly has its CEO dead. It says that the Department of Health, okay, appointed Bulkeng and other private contractors to install oxygen plants at 55 hospitals across South Africa. So this was a story I carried about 2 weeks ago, where these companies, these independent private contractors, they actually had a bid for the tender to supply oxygen plants to 55 hospitals in South Africa. Now, it says that the project's budget, actually initially set at roughly 250 million rand, has ballooned to 836 million rand, all right? So 250 million rand would actually be able to achieve the contract to supply oxygen plants to 55 hospitals in South Africa. But now the budget actually now rose to 836 million rand, for which one of them actually went to Bulkeng. Now the owner of Bulkeng, Nathi Ndlovu, actually is dead, all right? The report here has the face and the image supplied of this CEO, and he actually looks like a dark guy, and all. So it says that Bulkeng, seemingly a ghost company with no online presence, no offices, and a very elusive director, secured the largest portion of the oxygen plant's bid. All right. It says that, it continues to say that the investigation says that we have examined Bulkeng's bid submission and the supporting documents and have found several red flags, one of which stems from the South African Health Products Regulatory Authority, SAPRA, certificate, which Bulkeng included in its application. No, so this SAPRA actually seemed to be like a license which contractors who actually wish to go in the health industry or area to carry out contracts must achieve or acquire, and there are certain jurisdictions and requirements to have a SAPRA license. So this Bulkeng actually had this SAPRA certificate, but now these investigators argue that they found some discrepancies in its application for the SAPRA certificate. So it says that improper use of SAPRA license. Bulkeng is not registered with SAPRA. Okay, and it seemingly used the certificate of another company without the knowledge of that company. All right. Now, it says that the IDT has claimed that Bulkeng was in a joint venture partnership with an entity named Brutus Atlas Copco Industrials South Africa. This entity supposedly held the SAPRA certificate Bulkeng would have needed for its bid. Now, no such company, however, has been ever registered in South Africa. So, in other words, it says that Bulkeng actually partnered or stated that it was in partnership with Brutus Atlas Copco Industrial South Africa, and that this Brutus Atlas actually was the company that actually had the SAPRA license, to which Bulkeng, now in partnership with this company, now had the legitimacy to apply for a bid for the contract, to supply these oxygen plants to 55 hospitals in South Africa. All right. Now it says that the investigators argue that there's no entity like Brutus Atlas Copco, in South Africa's business register, so to speak. So no entity like the Brutus Atlas Copco Industrial South Africa was ever found registered in South Africa. Okay, so it now says that we've since established that the IDT had somehow melded together the names of two separate entities. And now the fact surrounding the SAPRA license actually appears to as follows. So this is a breakdown of the whole discrepancy around the SAPRA license. So the investigators reveal now that Ndlovu knew fully well that his company, Bulkeng, did not have the required license or certificate, all right? He therefore approached one Christo Brewer, the owner of a local company named Brutus Air Solutions, all right, Christo Brewer. Now, Christo Brewer's image is actually here, according to the Daily Maverick, post. And it's kind of like interesting as well that, this is not only something like probably an ANC black-led affair, but Christo Brewer here appears to also be what many people would now call a white South African coming together whose name has been mentioned in this story. So let's understand where Brewer stands here. So it says that come July 2023, Ndlovu and Brewer must have had some sort of deal in place, given that they attended a tender briefing session together on the 7th of July 2023. It says that this briefing took place at IDT's offices in Pretoria, where Ndlovu and Brewer were joined by one of Brewer's colleagues from Brutus Air, according to a signed attendance register, all right? And the Daily Maverick have a scanned image of this attendance register showing that Brewer and actually Ndlovu actually signed together to attend this, event, so to speak, at IDT's office in Pretoria. So now it says that like Bulkeng, Brutus Air Solutions also was not registered with SAPRA. So it couldn't lawfully distribute medical equipment, all right? And this is where the local subsidiary of Atlas Copco, a multinational engineering and manufacturing group, enters the picture. It says that Brutus Air Solutions is a distributor for Atlas Copco in South Africa, all right? And Atlas Copco does have a valid SAPRA certificate, which is held in the name of Atlas Copco Industrial South Africa. And this was the very certificate that Bulkeng had included in its bid. Now, the problem is, however, that Atlas Copco never gave anyone permission to use their license. Wow. Wow, this is a story, man, this is a story. So in other words, it appears that Atlas Copco might decide to take Ndlovu's Bulkeng company to court, which then demanded that probably there had to be a way for Bulkeng to escape from this. And probably, I don't know if maybe Bulkeng ended up ending his life or committing suicide before this whole story comes to this level. The investigation goes further. It says that Atlas Copco was not a party to the tender process, all right, and does not know what documents the tendering parties were requested to provide. We are looking into whether there was any improper use of our license by any party in this substance, says the vice president of Atlas Copco Group, Sub-Saharan Africa. Her name was Marilyn Govenda. The investigators said that they now later asked Govenda whether their investigation had yielded any answers, and they wanted to know whether Atlas Copco would take action against Ndlovu or Brewer should they find that Atlas' license had indeed been misappropriated. Gova now said, "We decline to comment on this matter for the time being." Yeah. Okay. So the investigator now go on to say that they now went further to ask Brewer what role he played in sourcing Atlas Copco's SAPRA certificate. And the report also here shows this Zutelele Hospital in the rural Eastern Cape, which is one of the sites allocated to Bulkeng to install a new oxygen plant. And we know that, a lot of complaints have been coming from the Eastern Cape. I remember the last story I made where it says that, some contracts for water, actually just disappeared in the Eastern Cape. So these are the kind of things going on in the Eastern Cape, and it appears that the Eastern Cape doesn't seem to have a foothold on its development trajectory going forward. So Brewer now writes in an email to these investigators saying, only after our quote was accepted was there a request from the IDT through Bulkeng on if the equipment or product was SAPRA satisfied, which it is, and we confirmed the same as the distributor of Atlas Copco. But what of Govenda's assertion that Atlas Copco wasn't aware that anyone had used their license? Wouldn't this potentially amount to a tender fraud? Brewer then says, we cannot comment on your advertisements as to what Atlas Copco told you, but again, we confirm that we are a distributor of Atlas Copco, and we are in constant discussions with Atlas Copco on all matters as their distributor and have full knowledge on what we do, and when what you read between the lines are denied and unsupported. See, this is Brewer now arguing with the investigators, okay? Because the investigators are getting close to a point where the arguments and the whole case actually reveals that the SAPRA certificate of Atlas Copco, which is actually a multinational in charge of, this whole area of contracts in terms of supplying oxygen plants, actually is coming to the fore. And Brewer, who is, I think he's a representative here of Brutes Air Solutions, is a supplier to Atlas Copco. But now, Brewer is actually storming really hard that, the investigators are probably going on wrong territory, and that, the lines in which they are reading in between for this case are denied. Now, these investigators, really bullheaded, they go forward. They say, contrary to what the IDT has stated, Brewer denies that Brutes Air Solutions was in formal joint venture with Bulkeng. Now, Brewer is now still speaking. He says, we confirm that Bulkeng is a customer and only a customer. And like any other customer of Brutes, we were requested to quote on the project for Bulkeng, which we did and which was accepted and approved. We are not and never were in a joint venture with Bulkeng. This is Brewer now speaking. So he's actually contradicting everything that was supposedly believed to have been the framing for which Bulkeng Solutions, whose CEO was Nati Ndlovu, had the prerequisites to attain this tender contract from the state to supply 55 oxygen equipment, oxygen plants to hospitals across South Africa. Now, these investigators now going forward, they say the attendance register for last year's tender briefing, however, points to a much closer relationship between Bulkeng and Brutes Air. Brewer and his colleague, which is actually one Kokomur, his name, they both signed the document as supposed representatives of Bulkeng. They didn't write their own company's email address in the relevant box either, instead opting to include one for Bulkeng, all right? Now, asked about the briefing session, Brewer stated, we attended the meeting as the technical support on our accepted quote for Bulkeng, and all parties were and are fully aware who we were and the role that we play. We were there for various technical presentations, and everything was done with and under Brutes logo, and we were always clothed with Brutes brandings. Brewer said he did not know anything about Ndlovu's purported death. We have seen news of the unfortunate passing of Mr. Ndlovu, but we have no details relating thereto, says Brewer. Now, the IDT and the health department both failed to respond to our detailed query, says this investigator. And also, IDT spokesperson Pasha Magolane actually says that the IDT and health will be issuing a media statement regarding the PSA in due course. When no such statement was forthcoming, these investigators say they now followed with Foster Mohale, who is actually the spokesperson of the Department of Health. Mohale said in a text message, "We haven't made a decision on whether to proceed with this statement or other approaches," says the Ministry of Health spokesperson. The investigation then goes on to open up on more red flags regarding this whole thing. It says that further red flags stem from the business address that Bulkeng referenced in his bid documents and in other records related to the tender. It said that the documents include an offer letter to the IDT for the oxygen rollout, and that this document lists Bulkeng's address as a commercial building on Rivonia Boulevard in Johannesburg. All right. So the document, which then shows the address for Bulkeng, was actually the document showed that the address was at Rivonia Boulevard in Johannesburg. Now you trust these investigators. They actually visited Rivonia Boulevard in Johannesburg, and they found a block on this address, and they have a picture here, of when they visited this address. What now stands on this address is a block that is actually named Edinburgh Terraces, and it's now largely occupied by a private school. All right. So in other words, that's a very major discrepancy for such a state level tenderpreneur, so to speak, that actually should supply such important elements as oxygen plants to hospitals in South Africa, giving a wrong address and all that. The investigators go on to say that on Bulkeng's tender documents, Ndlovu claimed that his company had been located in Block A. In the signed offer letter, Ndlovu stated that Bulkeng had occupied Unit A2005, while other Bulkeng tender documents reference Unit C2003. All right, a lot of red flags. Now, it says that these units numbers were, by all accounts, a thumbsuck. One thing I can say for certain, Edinburgh Terraces never had offices with the unit numbers he is claiming, says the property owner. Now, in fact, the owner said that Bulkeng had never leased offices at Edinburgh Terraces, all right? However, it seems likely that Ndlovu did at some point work from the building. The facilities manager recognized Ndlovu's name and suggested that he may have been subletting from another tenant, all right? Now, in any event, Ndlovu had almost certainly vacated the building by the time he signed the tender documents. In other words, it appears like a case where one signs a contract bid, but at the point of signing departs from the address in which was stated to host the business or the office for which the tender bid should actually come. Now, he then says that the Sparks School, which now occupies the entirety of Block A, which was actually stated to be in Ndlovu's address, the building address for Bulkeng's, business, opens its doors to primary school learners. This Spark School now opened its doors to primary school learners in January of 2022. It says that the high school opened in January of 2023, but in Bulkeng's offer letter, Bulkeng's offer letter actually was signed in July 2023. In other words, Bulkeng's offer letter was signed when after the high school had been opened at this address where it claimed to operate, so to speak. So in other words, it would never have been an address for the Bulkeng's office in the first place. So the investigators then argued, they said that they sought clarity from Ndlovu regarding Bulkeng's business premises when we met him at his attorney's office. He refused to confirm where Bulkeng's current offices were located, instead undertaking to respond in writing. Now, there's another caption here, says, "Not my signature." It says that the signed offer letter yielded another red flag. These investigative journalists are really on fire. I mean, like, it's really probably warranted why, I don't know, probably Bulkeng CEO now had to commit suicide, because all the things that are really being, excavated from this investigation should land someone probably in jail for a long time. So it says that the signed offer letter yielded another red flag, all right? It says that the document was supposedly witnessed by one Audrey Reddy. We managed to track down a business person who goes by that name. As it so happens, Audrey Reddy is a supplier of office equipment to the IDT, all right? And they have a picture here, with the offer letter. I think this is the offer letter for Bulkeng Solutions. It then says that they showed this Audrey Reddy Bulkeng's offer letter, and her first response was fraud. She claimed that the witness signature did not belong to her. So in other words, it appeared to be like an identity theft, so to speak, using different people's signatures and addresses and all that to really win bids from the government. It's really sad how depressing this news is, and how, most of the complaints for South Africa's health ministry and health, so to speak, has actually been going down because of these kinds of corruption. Really sad, really sad. The investigators said that they pressed Ndlovu for details surrounding the signature, and they wondered if probably could he perhaps recall when exactly Audrey Reddy, who exactly Audrey Reddy was. Could he tell us where he was when she witnessed his company's offer letter? And could he provide us with her contact details? Ndlovu refused to answer these questions, again vowing that he would respond in writing. Now, they now say that another caption in this whole investigation, allegedly dead. It then says that 3 days after our meeting with Ndlovu and his lawyers, IOL journalist Thabo Makwaka claimed in a post on X that Ndlovu has died. It says that the post has since gained significant traction, but we haven't managed to confirm Ndlovu's death, albeit hardly for lack of trying. We visited several police stations and mortuaries in Gauteng and contacted some of his family members and business associates, all in vain. We also asked the police whether they knew anything. And at the time of writing, SAPS SAP spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Mavela Masondo actually could not confirm whether Ndlovu had indeed died. Meanwhile, sources familiar with oxygen plants initiatives say they weren't sure how the project would proceed. As things stand, Bulkeng's involvement in the rollout seems to be up in the air. And that's the end of this investigation. So really powerful. I really appreciate these journalists so much. It's shocking, and it's really tiring. It can really be overwhelming. For a South African citizen, this whole thing can actually be overwhelming. I remember I was listening to a podcast from, one of South Africa's biggest podcasters. His name is, I'll remember his name in a bit. But he spoke to how, in South Africa, if you do not have money, right, you might not have access to good health care. And these state funds that are actually disbursed to really prop up the state hospitals that could help manage at least the majority of South Africans, both rich, poor, middle class, actually have most of these funds being swindled into really questionable businesses and enterprises. And it's really unfortunate that, this kind of thing keeps on going on in Africa. It's not just South Africa. Almost all African countries have this whole problem with corruption, where contracts are released for projects, but they end up in private pockets. And when investigations get close to upholding these things, these cases, the proponents end up being dead somehow or committing suicide. And it's really sad how where we as Africans can go with this kind of attitude, with this kind of character, because there seems to be no love in the hearts, of African leaders for the people, you see, and that's what it spells. Because if one individual can actually pocket 248 million to the tune of 248 million rand for something that's supposed to be designed for the public good, then it means that, these are really dark hearts that have no love for the people and for the continent of Africa. And so before we can move forward as a continent, there has to be sort of like a circumcision of the heart, so to speak, of the people we put to represent us in our nations, in our societies, who really have a love for the country, for the spaces that actually engulf their being, and really fight for the development of these regions. Otherwise, we'll keep on having stagnating poverty. We see that the majority of South Africa's poor is alarming. Sometimes when I see the videos coming out of South Africa for the poor, many times I wonder if maybe even the poor in Nigeria are richer than the poor in South Africa. This is kind of the assessment I see. There's so much poverty across the land, and to me it's really shocking that most of this is actually born from the corruption in the hearts of men and women like you and me, who are actually giving contracts to actually help in the development of the people of Africa. It's quite unfortunate. But anyway, what do you guys think? I'll be stopping here for this video. I have a next story coming up on the problem of Johannesburg and the water crisis in Johannesburg, and some speeches in the parliament. Really powerful. Look forward to that video. It's going to be the next one after this, as we'll wrap up here. What do you think about this investigation? Share your thoughts in the comments.